From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
Coming up on AgDay.
Coming up on Outdoors on the Farm, when a spot like this picks itself, you got to take advantage of it. We'll explain next on Outdoors on the Farm.
Well, Congress is out of session, so is hope dwindling to ratify USMCA by the end of the year. We talk with some dairy experts at World Dairy Expo.
And could this be a new chapter in the global trade war after the U.S. announces new tariffs against the European Union?
If the U.S. imposes countermeasures, it will be pushing the EU into a situation where we will have to do the same.
AgDay, presented by the Chevy Silverado and the all-new Silverado HD, the strongest, most advanced family of Silverados ever.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. The European Union is warning it will retaliate against the U.S. decision to slap tariffs on a range of exports, saying the tariffs could cause job losses in Europe and price increases for Americans. The Trump administration deciding to put new import taxes on EU goods worth $7.5 billion, the latest tariffs targeting large aircraft, but also many typical European products such as olives, whiskey, wine, cheese, and yogurt. They take effect October 18th. Now they add up to a 10% tax on EU aircraft and a 25% rate on everything else. The U.S. getting the legal go-ahead from the World Trade Organization in a case involving illegal EU subsidies for the plane maker Airbus. European Commission spokesperson Daniel Rosario saying Trump's administration was shooting itself in the foot with such a move.
Let us remind of the fact that both the EU and the US have been found at fault by the WTO dispute settlement system for continuing to provide certain unlawful subsidies to their aircraft manufacturers. In the parallel Boeing case, the EU will in some months equally be granted rights to impose countermeasures against the United States as a result of its continued failure to comply with WTO rules.
Mindful that the tariffs do not actually come into effect for a couple of weeks, the spokesman stressed that the EU is still open to talking. China is continuing to buy U.S. ag this week. USDA confirming another soybean buy of 252,000 metric tons and a white wheat purchase of 130,000 metric tons. Now, so far this week, China's purchased 716,000 metric tons of U.S. beans. USDA reporting last week the country bought 1.5 million metric tons. Trade talks between the two countries are scheduled to start up again next week, this time in Washington. Now, our Washington correspondent Jim Wiesmeyer reporting some believe an interim deal centered around China buying more U.S. ag products and postponing planned tariff increases is still seen as being possible if the two sides show some flexibility. More than $14 billion, that's how much USDA reports U.S. farmers have received so far in China trade aid payments over the last 2 years. That's out of a promised $28 billion. USDA has paid out more than $5 billion just in the latest round. Trade also top of mind at this year's World Dairy Expo. AgDay national reporter Betsy Gibbon joins us from Madison, Wisconsin. And Betsy, many are concerned the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement won't get passed by Congress this year.
Clinton, it's almost the end of the year and USMCA still has to be ratified by the United States. And with Congress now being out of session and lawmakers now embroiled in an impeachment process, many wonder if USMCA will get done this year.
I would say my optimism that I had has been slightly reduced the last couple of weeks, to be honest. You know, once we run up against the election calendar, really, the chances of anything happening of substance, whether it's trade-related or otherwise, those grow less and less.
The one thing that we have working for us is I do think that the Democratic leadership wants to show that there can be business as usual on other issues besides whatever happens with the impeachment process. So we really are crossing our fingers that the impeachment process doesn't derail a vote on USMCA.
Canada also has to ratify USMCA as well. Even though the country has an election this month, Canadian media says they expect the deal to be ratified in its own country, even if Canadian dairy farmers don't exactly like it.
I think it'll pass. I think Canada's a trading nation. This is an agreement that has been worked out, and as I say, dairy gave away that access. I think it's done. I think the big question right now is whether it's going to right here in America.
Ag Secretary Sonny Perdue spoke at World Dairy Expo and he said he expects USMCA to pass once it hits the floor. He says he hopes Congress can focus on trade deals and not recent distractions happening in Washington as well. Reporting at World Dairy Expo, I'm Betsy Gibbon.
Some places of the country have jumped right past fall and into winter. Meteorologist Mike Hoffman shows us in today's crop comments.
Thanks, Clinton. Snow has arrived in northern Minnesota. This image captured on a Minnesota Department of Transportation camera near Orr. It's estimated about 1.5 inches fell in that area, the first accumulation of the season. And taking a look at the wind speed forecast, it's going to be kind of windy starting off in parts of the Northeast, but especially the northern plains and northern Rockies as we head through the day today. The slow moving system is going to be moving through the northern plains over the next 48 hours, so we'll still see a lot of wind in the northern third of the plains as we start the day tomorrow, and even heading through the rest of the day. It'll continue to be windy in those areas and eventually into the western Great Lakes. I'll have more on your forecast coming up.
Coming up, love ice cream? See who's taking home top honors at this year's World Dairy Expo. Plus, Chip Flory is back with a new season of Outdoors on the Farm, and it's off to a soggy start.
Closed captioning is brought to you by BASF. Grow smart with BASF. We create chemistry.
The weekly USDA soybean export sales numbers top trader forecast, but even another flash sale to China today wasn't enough to move soybean futures. Here's an update from the scene.
It's been a rather quiet session, but it has been an exciting week. We got that big bid earlier in the week, which took us up towards some of our technical resistance levels. We've talked about this for a while. That gap from last month's USDA report did get filled, 392 3/4 to a T. Starting to come off of that a little bit, which I think is ultimately healthy for the market, so long as we can continue to mark higher lows and then higher highs. Now for the November soybean market, achieved the level 915. This is a 50% retracement from the contract high to the contract low, as well as a 200-day moving average. Wouldn't be surprised to see us take a little bit of a breather here with their livestock roundup, and we have continued to see the cattle market grind higher day after day, week after week after that breakdown from last month on the Tyson fire. Speaking of that breakdown last month, we're right back at that gap. We've made an incredible run. The RSI is a little bit overbought, so I wouldn't be surprised to see this gap get filled.
From trade to markets, a group of cattlemen and women gathering in Omaha this week, calling on the president to intervene in the beef industry. Put together by the Organization for Competitive Markets, Wednesday's rally to stop the stealing saw about 400 people show up. The complaints stem from consolidation in the packer segment, saying the independent feeders are at the mercy of these big buyers. They're calling on the government to break up the big four packers.
And fortunately, that anger has been heard not only by us, but also by Secretary Perdue. And so Secretary Perdue has launched an investigation. And the whole goal of this investigation is to understand what transpired, what happened, and to actually give us some facts and analysis. And I think once that is done, it will give all of us in the industry the opportunity to try to figure out what's next.
Beyond calling for Perdue to be fired, rally organizers list 6 things that can be done to improve cattle markets. Those include restoring mandatory country of origin labeling, limiting foreign beef imports, mandatory marketing and price data, and several ideas on beefing up the Packers and Stockyards Act. Much of the momentum coming in the wake of the recent fire at the Tyson plant near Holcomb, Kansas. Now the plant, estimated to handle 5% of steer and heifer slaughter capacity across the country. Portions of that plant are now back up and running, and 7 weeks after the fire, Darrell Peel of Oklahoma State University says the impacts are clearer now and are also fading.
You know, slaughter rates, the packing industry really did a very good job of doing some sort of emergency things, particularly large Saturday kills to keep slaughter rates up. And so we continued to move cattle. There was no significant backlog of fed cattle that didn't get processed in a fairly timely way. But to do that, of course, there have been lots of other shocks in the market. The boxed beef market shot up and then has quickly retreated back to previous levels or to where we would be this time of the year. So that effect is pretty much out of that market. Feeder cattle markets, which initially gapped down hard on the futures, cash markets were impacted. They're recovering. The futures market has completely recovered in terms of filling that gap.
Peel says the fed cattle market is probably the one still impacted the most because there's still a significant squeeze on packing capacity. Greg Henderson, editor of Drovers, joining us now. Greg, you were at the rally in Nebraska this week. What was your takeaway from that event?
Well, I think the main takeaway obviously is that there are a lot of cattlemen that are very unhappy with the way the markets perform. They are losing money. It's a bad time to be in the industry right now. This is a time when most people are selling fall calves. Markets are down. Their income's going to be down, and you know, it's just a general time that they believe that markets are not treating them fairly.
Now, we have seen a bit of a recovery in cattle prices since that Tyson fire, at least a little bit. What's next in this conversation?
I think the market's going to get better going forward. The reason that I say that is because all indications point to the fact that supplies are moderating. The number of cattle headed to slaughter is going to be declining. We've seen the peak supplies. That's always good for prices, obviously. We're also going to see a time when the weather is obviously moderating a little bit. This is a time when beef demand is going to pick up. So markets going ahead, you know, inventory numbers, all of those things are fundamentally positive for the industry.
All right, Greg, thank you.
Hey y'all, Justin Moore here. Get ready to kick up some dust with the Roxor Dirt Roads and a Country Show sweepstakes. Enter now for a chance to win a customized off-road Roxor and 2 VIP tickets to one of my upcoming concerts. Visit roxoroffroad.com/Justin Moore.
Meteorologist Mike Hoffman here taking a look at the drought monitor. And Mike, they're calling it a flash drought across, 14, 15 states in the southern southeast part of the U.S.
Yeah, now some of this area was already in a drought, but boy, some of it has suddenly come on, like you said, kind of a flash drought type situation. So let's go back 4 weeks and see what it looked like. Watch the change here. Wow, almost no drought across the Tennessee and Ohio River valleys into the mid-Atlantic states. There was just pockets of moderate drought in the rest of the southeast. Now, Texas has been going into drought conditions for much of the second half of the season, well, the summer season, and now that we're into fall, it is continuing. You can see how the yellows and oranges just keep expanding every week. Been getting worse in that area, and that's where we are now. I mean, we went from almost no drought in Kentucky to some extreme drought and a widespread area of severe drought already just within the past 4 weeks. Kind of amazing. I know here in northern Indiana, if we hadn't had 5 inches of rain a week ago, we might be getting into that area as well. No drought through most of the central and western corn belt, as you can see. Storm system in the northeast, mainly rain, but there's a little snow. Higher elevations, parts of Maine. Next system coming across the Rockies. High pressure keeping things dry over the northern Mississippi Valley into the Great Lakes as we head through this afternoon. Heading through tonight then, unfortunately, this front's mainly dry through the southeast. You know, drought's one of those things when there's no moisture to evaporate up into the sky, even a front can come through dry, and it just perpetuates the drought. So it's tough to get out of once you get into one. There's all the rain moving through the northern plains as we start the weekend there, 7 a.m. tomorrow. And then by the end of the day, we'll be seeing some of those showers and thunder showers into the western Great Lakes, scattered through the southern plains and hopefully scattered parts of the southeast there. Precipitation estimates past 24 hours, a little bit in the northeast and some spots in the southwest into the southern plains. Adding in the next 36, a lot of it's going to be added with that storm system in the northern Mississippi Valley. Checking out snowfall then, very little, if any, over the past 24 hours, but the next 36, northern Rockies, maybe a touch of snow in some of the highest elevations of Maine there. Temperatures still very hot in the far southeast, but much more comfortable across the northern tier of states, and that will remain low down to 39 tomorrow morning. Sault Ste. Marie is what the computer models are saying, and we do cut down on the heat in the southeast. Here's the jet stream. You can see that storm system moving through the northern plains. There's Sunday, pretty good trough in the middle of the country. That moves east. We go zonal for a while as we head into next week, and then another pretty strong trough moving through the northern tier of states as we head through the second half of next week. That's a look across the country. Now let's take a look at some local forecasts. We'll head to Boise, Idaho first of all. Some snow around the mountains in that area, otherwise kind of gusty winds, high of 56. Green Bay, Wisconsin, partly sunny, a bit breezy, high of 54. Lafayette, Louisiana, evening thunderstorms and hot, high of 94 degrees.
Fall is a great time to get out into nature. Up next, we'll go outdoors on the farm with Chip Flory as he learns about wetland development. And later, the world's biggest dairy event is picking the top cheese and butter. We've got the winners in the country.
Closed captioning is brought to you by BASF. Grow smart with BASF. We create chemistry.
I'm Justin Moore. Welcome to Outdoors on the Farm, brought to you by my friends at Roxor. From muddy trails to dusty work sites to hidden hunting spots, nothing gets you through it like a rugged Roxor. It's a side-by-side unlike any other.
Outdoors on the farm, where I was born, I was raised, and I'll do whatever it takes to stay. Outdoors on the farm.
Each Friday this fall, AgriTalk's Chip Flory will be outdoors on the farm, sharing tips and ideas about managing wildlife and natural resources. Well, today he starts in a soggy spot, a newly formed wetland in Iowa.
Welcome back to Outdoors on the Farm, everybody. I'm your host, Chip Flory. I've got Tim Recker. We're in Arlington, Iowa, and we're looking over. It looks like a spot that was just kind of carved out of a cornfield when you get right down to it, Tim, because it's doggone wet in there, isn't it?
It's really wet. We've had 6 inches of rain this week. This farm was the wettest farm in Fayette County when I bought it in 2013.
Yeah.
And in about another 2 months, we're going to transform this thing into a crepe wetland.
Very cool. Let's talk a little bit more about the history of this, because this wetland area really kind of picked itself, didn't it?
Exactly. There's 750 acres of every direction you see comes to this location.
Gotcha.
So it's a perfect location to put a wetland in. 750 acres of ground. There's going to be 8 acres of water on this. This thing was solid trees when I purchased it.
Trees, willows, everything.
Wetland, willows, the whole works. And in 2013, we had this rain that lasted all year long, prevent plant. It allowed me the first year to improve this farm.
Yep.
Get it tiled, get a bulletproof tile system in. We couldn't really do anything to this piece, so I've had to kind of just leave it alone, and knowing that there's better things coming for this chunk of ground.
Right, right. And the better things coming is, like we said, when a wetland identifies itself, you start looking for the opportunities to put it in. But the 750 acres, is that kind of a minimum for a crepe wetland? 500
to 1,500 acres is a good size. They want to have about 1% water to the land mass. Okay. So 750 acres, I'm going to have 8 acres of water. I'm a little bit over 1%. So what this thing is going to do, when we have big rains here, and we've had some big rains, we go over the road. We flood for a short period of time, goes over the road. Right. What we're going to create is this big bathtub.
Nice.
And then it's going to expand.
Yep.
It's going to have a bounce of 2 feet so that we don't send all the water down it in a short period of time. We're going to allow that water to, the sediments to come out.
Yep.
Denitrify.
Yep.
Slow it down and just let nature do its thing. So it's a natural. This is a natural location because it's just a big bowl in here.
I mean, we're checking a lot of the boxes here, Tim, with this. We've got the nitrate runoffs that we're trying to control, water quality issues. It's everything that this wetland is supposed to be doing, it's going to be doing. All right, we are with Tim Recker. In the next episode of Outdoors on the Farm, we're going to be talking about the development of this wetland, how we're going to pay for it. There's some crepe dollars that we can use and some cost share. We're going to talk about that in the next episode of Outdoors on the Farm.
All right, thanks, Chip. If you like cheese or butter, stick around. We're off to World Dairy Expo to meet the winners of this year's Top Cheese and Butter Awards. We're Where can you get the best butter, cheese, and milk in the nation? Well, the winners were announced at this year's World Dairy Expo in Madison, Wisconsin. The contest received over 1,000 entries in 75 product classes. Now, when it comes to cheese and butter, the grand champion was a Gouda made by Babcock Hall Dairy in Madison, Wisconsin. The Grade A grand champion was a low-fat cottage cheese made by Prairie Farms Dairy in Carbondale, Illinois. And the ice cream grand champion is the Sweet Me Lemon Bar by Kemp's in Cedarburg, Wisconsin. For a list of all the winners, head over to our website, agweb.com/AgDay. Click on the news links. And that's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. Spend part of your day with us. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day.